All right. Hello, everyone. You're watching You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. I brought back your favorite guest on my show. He was my very first guest on the show. And then we had a long hiatus, and then he came back, and now he's back again for the holiday season. And he's even wearing a holiday shirt, which is great.
I
So,
know.
welcome back, Donovan Fowler.
Thank you. First, I didn't even I may have said this last time. I didn't even realize that I was your first guest, or maybe
Yeah.
I forgot. But that's an honor. It's an honor to be on 3 times, and it's also been an honor to be the first guest on the podcast. And as far as this shirt goes, yes, this shirt is, like I said, it's unseasonably hot in Southern California right now. So this shirt was perfect because my dad sent me this shirt. Like, I think he sent it to me in the middle of the summer last year, and I looked at it and I was like, great, a Hawaiian shirt. And I looked closer, and it has Santa playing football and being like tackled by elves and all this stuff. So yeah, the reindeers are on offense and the elves are on defense. But it's actually a great shirt, and it's very apropos for the heat of the season. So.
And it's also perfect for this episode because we are going to be talking about Christmas movies. And I know I had probably 2 or 3 people that wrote to me and said, your last episode talking about movies was too long. So we've cut it in half, you guys. I know you guys are all.
I mean, you do have, in this country, we have something called the fast forward button. So if you ever get bored, I'm not encouraging you to fast forward, but you do have the option. You have the freedom.
Exactly. Yes, this is true. Also, I can talk to Donovan as long as I want. So, you know what? Just let me enjoy my show. So, we're going to start with, because I did shorten it this time, though, because I did feel like we were kind of having to be rushed through some of the discussion points that we had. So, Donovan has picked 5 Christmas movies. This is a top 10 Christmas movie episode. Donovan has picked 5. I have picked 5. And since Donovan is the guest, he gets to go first. Donovan, what would be one of your top 5 Christmas movies for the season?
Okay, so I'm now shifting these around in my head because I'm starting at number 5. And this was a lot of deliberation. I talked with my little brother about this before I got on the Skype call. I went over the list with him. He approved it, but I still feel a little tentative about it. So, all right. So I would say at number 5, I'm going to say Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody can agree that that's a classic. And obviously, the song has ingrained itself into our culture. But yeah, I like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I remember there was what was it? Was it Huffington Post tried to make a thing of it last year where they were like, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is awful because Santa's like a jerk, and the father is like toxically masculine or whatever. And I just found it hilarious because the whole story is like, it's a kid's story. Santa is a bit of a jerk in the story. He is not a nice guy. Yeah. But I'm all for that because it's a bit of a change of pace. Santa doesn't have to be nice all the time. He's human, just like the rest of us.
I mean, he's a real person,
Yeah, of course. I mean, I send a letter to him every year. I also got coal in my stocking last year, so
What did you put in last year's letter, Donovan?
It was like I said, it's a complicated relationship with Santa, but overall, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I find it very quotable. It's very quotable. Like there's like that whole what's his name, the elf.
Yukon Cornelius. Oh no.
Yukon Cornelius is an epic character. I don't know what he's doing there. I don't know who came. That's part of it. It's like, who came up with this cast of characters and this whole storyline? Like it isn't I don't think Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is literature. Like I think this was literally come up with for like a children's special.
Yeah.
But yeah, the characters are fun. The elf's name is Herbie, I think.
Yeah.
Because he says he wants to be a dentist. And all the other elves are like, Herbie doesn't like to make toys. Herbie doesn't like to make toys. Herbie doesn't like to make toys. Shame on you. Like it's just the funniest dynamic. So yeah, overall, just I think is a fun movie. Also, the stop motion. I mean, from a technical standpoint, the stop motion is a lot of fun and pretty well done. So
Yeah, I actually moved Rudolph to honorable mentions because I had to make room for other things. It's hard. It's just so hard to pick. But
I can
um,
see why. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love like Rudolph is one of those movies that like when you're in like the stress of the holiday season, I literally did this last year. I was stressed out from the holidays and from work and everything. And I went home and I just put that movie on and it just made me feel better because
Oh,
it's like a feel good movie because
yeah.
you grew up with it as a kid, you watched it ad nauseum, you watched it in the middle of the summer because you can because I have it at VHS, okay?
I never
And
did that. Disclaimer: I never did that
okay,
because I
Donovan.
don't watch Christmas movies in the summer. That to me is like I have to go to confession if I watch a Christmas movie in the summer. So
Well, this is the reason why I'm not Catholic because I want to watch my Christmas movies in the summer. Okay,
okay,
so
okay, weirdo.
yes, but I mean, I love the movie, and I think that as an adult, again, it is a feel good movie because you grew up with it as a kid. It's like a treasured memory. They're like your friends on the TV, and you're watching them again,
Yeah.
and it's a nice like bring yourself down to not necessarily reality, but just like I don't know, a blood pressure lowering movie. I need a list of those. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's worthy of top five for sure.
Also, the Bumble is
Yes.
probably my favorite character in that entire movie
Yeah.
because he's just the name, the Bumble, and
Yeah.
like this whole thing where they pull his teeth and all that stuff. It's so funny and charming, and it's a great adventure story. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a movie that I'm definitely looking forward to showing my niece because I feel like she's like 2 years old now, so I was always afraid that the Bumble was gonna like scare the
Yeah.
hell out of her, which it is like pretty scary in the beginning. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to it. It's a fun adventure story.
I am surprised my siblings were never scared of it. I tended not to be afraid of too many of those movies, although I do have a list of the things that I used to be terrified of as a child, but that was not one of them. I think it's maybe potentially scary to young kids, but I guess it depends on the
It's
kid.
the right. I mean, it's the right. It's like a fairy tale. I mean, it's the right amount of like
Yeah.
kind of mystery and scariness in terms of that. But yeah, you're right. It's not like over the top.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like have nightmares about it or anything. And now watch, I go home tonight and I have a nightmare about the Bumble.
Watch out for Krampus.
Yes, I'll check under my bed and find him there. Ah! So my number five, where's my list? My number five is How the Grinch Stole Christmas because you clearly forgot that one, didn't you?
Did.
That's why I'm here. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I love that movie because I am the Grinch, and you can ask my family members. I tend to be the prickly, non-hugging, like antisocial type.
Yes. Well, the non-hugging aspect of it, I do know from, you mentioned a coworker of ours was a big hugger, and
Yeah.
you were very uncomfortable with that.
Yes, I had to learn to deal with that. But as I like, that's why I like the Grinch because it's kind of like it's like watching a story about me play out because like Kelly's heart grew 3 sizes much bigger or whatever it is. But that is kind of how it's. There's times like, especially during the holidays, where I feel like, especially the last couple of years when I was having to travel home, like a longer distance, and I know you have to travel for holidays as well. It gets to be a lot of stress and just a lot of anxiety, and I tend to turn a little grinchy because of
Sure.
that kind of thing. And so I feel like that movie represents how a lot of people feel during the holidays, at least pre-Christmas. Like, why are we having to do this? Like, why are we having to, we're getting kind of grouchy and we're kind of
Start
forgetting about
you
what
start
it really is all about.
stealing all the cans of Who Hash,
Yes.
birds and stealing the roast beast and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that's how I spend my Christmas. Anyway, that's why I like that movie because I feel like my personality sometimes lends to a little bit of grinchiness and it just kind of reminds me, Kelly, stop being the Grinch and just enjoy your Christmas.
See, this is why this is a good dynamic because that pairs really well with Rudolph, I think.
Mhm.
You know, like, I mean, I feel like those are two like different animation styles, but two like kind of children's Christmas movies, like very good entry level Christmas movies
Mhm.
that have they're just absolute classics. But yeah, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is definitely, you know, I'd probably put Rudolph above it as I just did,
Yeah.
but it's definitely like it's up there, yeah, with as far as that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a total classic. Also, the songs in both of those movies, they get stuck in your head and you're singing
Yeah.
them all the way into July unless you're Donovan.
I love, yeah, well, you know, we can debate that, you
We'll
know,
have a
whole,
separate episode
whole
debate.
nother podcast,
Yeah.
Christmas Part Two. Is it okay to listen to Christmas music the day after Halloween? Don't answer. But you know, the Grinch song is hilarious to me. Like,
Mhm.
there's so many good lines in that song that are just like the funniest, like, um, I wouldn't touch you with a, 110-foot pole, kind of thing. It's
Right.
just, yeah, it's great.
It's fantastic. And I also love the song because, and this is just my own personal little thing, I like superimposing other people's names into that song. Or other politicians. I'm gonna this is
That's
what I'm gonna
perfect.
do, Donovan. I am going to rewrite that song and make it about Gavin Newsom.
It's very memeable. Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
Gavin Newsom, the California Grinch.
I mean,
That,
I'm pretty sure he's the Antichrist, but that's another subject for another episode.
yeah, that's the theological. That's another theological podcast. Is Gavin Newsom the Antichrist?
There's just I feel like this conversation that we're having is like that the concept that was in Endgame where there's the timeline and then there's like the different timelines that shoot off of it. That's how this thing is going. And I'm totally fine with that. That's totally fine. But
And
what is your number 4?
number 4 on my list is okay. Wait, now I'm shifting them around. Oh, well, actually, yeah, I'm going to shift this one to number 4 because a couple of these are like shiftable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like I feel like, oh, this is 5, this is 4. But to go off of your theme of, when you're feeling grinchy, um, I I really love the story of Christmas Carol.
Hmm.
It's something that I've come to love more as I've gotten older, particularly because I really like Charles Dickens a lot. Like, he's like my favorite author.
Hmm.
The best adaptation, actually, I probably can't say it's the best because I haven't seen all the adaptations. Like the Jim Carrey one, I just wasn't interested in because it was so animated. And then the older one, I know everybody says that the original, like, kind of 1930s version, maybe 1940s version is like the best. But I have a particular affinity for the George C. Scott version,
Hmm.
which was sort of, it's very theatrical. Like, it's something where you kind of know, oh, this was shot like on, studio backlots in London or, wherever. Like, you can kind of see like uh some of the details of like, oh, this, it's not as well done a period piece as maybe some other adaptations. But George C. Scott, I think, is a really good Scrooge. I think he does a really good job as Scrooge. And the actor who plays Marley does a fantastic job of
Hmm.
kind of communicating exactly, I think, what that character is all about, kind of the despair of, like, finding yourself basically in purgatory. And then, oh gosh, wait, what was the other aspect of that film that I loved? I don't know. There's a drama to it that I particularly like. And it
Hmm.
was one of those, like I said, it's sort of throwaway Christmas movie. Like, I remember my dad got it in like a 2-pack, probably with like something like Jingle All the Way or
Hmm.
like the Miracle on 34th Street remake at Costco. It was like the two like these like saran wrapped two packaged VHSs.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of George C. Scott's performance in that and kind of how they portray um, a lot of it. So yeah.
Believe it or not, my number 4 was also A Christmas Carol.
Oh
Uh,
wow, you
the
and I are totally on point, aren't
I
we?
know. It's disturbing. I mean, get out of my show. But the only difference is I've actually never seen A Christmas Carol in any movie format all the way through. Like I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay.
I've never watched any version of A Christmas Carol, the movie, all the way through. I'm
Okay.
just putting it in here because it's classic.
But this is a movie list.
I know it's a movie list, and I know
All right.
it's been made into movies, and so that's why I included it. And you can't just not have.
Don't start with the Jim Carrey version, please.
Okay.
Start with the George C. Scott version. I'm actually looking forward to maybe watching the. I know Patrick Stewart did a TV movie years ago. It was like 2002, but that I don't think. I don't know. I don't want to discount it, but I know a lot of people say the one from like the golden era of filmmaking is the one.
I think, was there a version like a 1958 version or something? Maybe I'm getting confused with
That
the
might. I mean, maybe that's the one, but I just know that there was one that was in black and white that people often parody with like that whole like boy, what day is it? What day is it? And it's like, why it's Christmas Day? You know, and the whole thing about like go by the goose in the window, and then he's like the one as big as I, and he's like, yes, the very same. Anyways, but yes, there's a reason that story has lived on in culture, and it's because it's a story of redemption. I mean, I think it really is like I think it's a great kind of reminder that you can. Yeah, it's just a great kind of reminder of what the holiday is about. Which I mean, that's really what Christmas is all about to begin with.
Yeah.
It's sort of like it does kind of remind you just to be a better person and to kind of renew yourself.
Well, the thing is about A Christmas Carol, and I have to amend my statement because I have seen the Disney Mickey Mouse version all the way through.
Yeah, Disney Mickey. Actually, the Disney Mickey Mouse version is great.
It is, and that you can actually put that on the list of movies that I was scared of as a kid.
It's one too.
That one was terrifying to me as a kid.
There is it's a very dark story. I mean, they really captured kind of the ghost story aspect of it. Especially when death, or I guess the ghost of Christmas past comes, and like he sees his grave.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah, very scary.
Yeah, that part always terrified me as a kid. But I think that A Christmas Carol story I like it for similar reasons. Like it's a similar message to the Grinch story.
Yes.
Don't be the Grinch. Don't be Ebenezer Scrooge.
Right.
Enjoy the holiday and treat people well is kind of the message of both movies, really, because neither of them, I feel like, really follow the religious aspect of Christmas. They follow the more altruistic, like do maybe to a certain extent. It's more of the do unto others as you would have them do unto you kind of a message, without actually
definitely the Christmas spirit aspect.
Yeah.
I would say Christmas Carol, I think, does carry with it a very Christian sort of like I said, like that Christian theme of redemption, of realizing, one, that you should not be attached to material, objects, and that and all that, but really, like, by the end of that, and this is something that I've sort of explored a little bit recently, but this idea, because C.S. Lewis talks about it, but like this idea of like by the end of that story, you have the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas future, and then is there a ghost of Christmas present?
Ghost of Christmas, yeah.
Okay, but like Ebenezer Scrooge learns to live fully in the present. Like he learns to be like fully present in his own life and to share that, and really like by that it's like that's like when you are closest to God and you kind of are closest to people. But I agree with you in the sense of like there's no like over religious reference,
which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. It's kind of like what we talked about. We talked about this in our last episode.
Application, like J.R.R. Tolkien's allegory versus application.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Lord of the Rings was pretty much an overtly Catholic story without beating you over the head with it. And I feel like it's similar with a lot of these other Christmas movies. They're not necessarily retelling the story of the nativity, but they are telling a story of, like the love of money,
Right.
that's a bad thing, stuff
Yeah.
like that. There's a lot of Christian themes in it without actually talking about the actual reason why the holiday exists.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
So since we've synced up on our number 4 movies, let's find out what is Donovan's number 3.
My number 3 is going to be Miracle on 34th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I can already hear people probably groaning when I say this, but I'm going to say the remake.
Okay.
Which was written by John Hughes and directed by somebody who I can't remember because I don't think they were particularly famous. It wasn't Chris Columbus. That was another movie that we'll get to. But I really like and probably it's due to the fact that I love Maureen O'Hara.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love that era from which the original comes from. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I watched it as an adult. I never watched it as a kid, the original, and I did not like it as much as I like the remake. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. Maybe it's just sentimental attachment or whatever. But there is something to the remake that I do particularly like in the sense of like the performances are great. I mean, that little girl who plays, I just know her as Matilda. I think her name's Maura something, mm-hmm. But she's great. Santa Claus, aka Dr. Hammond from Jurassic Park, and Richard Attenborough, who's also a great director. He really had a fantastic career beyond his acting, but he's a great director, great actor. He plays Santa Claus in a great way that where you really like. I mean, it doesn't come off as a crazy person. It comes off as like, oh yeah, he's the real deal. Whereas I hate to say it, in the other one, you sort of look at him and he's so whimsical and everything that it's like there's something wrong with this fellow, which might be the original point of the perspective of the story. Mm-hmm. But I find that like the remake, I think particularly John Hughes used it as a way to sort of tackle the subject of faith. Mm-hmm. And I think at one point Santa Claus says to, the woman who is the mother of the little girl, he says to her, if you can't accept anything on faith, then you're doomed to live a life dominated by doubt. Mm-hmm. And there is something to that, like that if you're not willing to kind of throw yourself on the scales of actually believing that there's purpose to the universe, especially, then you will find yourself on the opposite end where you're just doubting a whole lot. And it becomes really hard to carry on with life that way. So I really like that. It mixes drama and comedy relatively well. It's like, it's classic 90s, filmmaking, which I used to kind of scoff at, but honestly, I find that there's a charm to it, despite the fact that sometimes it dates itself a little bit. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, the ending scene with the whole, like, I think the big, like, deciding moment that they decide that he really could be Santa Claus, the courts decided, is the fact that, in God we trust is on the dollar bill. Like, the little girl gives the judge a card with the dollar bill and circles in God we trust. Mm-hmm. And the judge says, well, if the U.S. government and the people of the United States can put their faith in in God, then, who are we to say that this man, might not be Santa Claus. So I find it a charming, kind of fun movie.
So the interesting thing is I've heard about that movie over and over and over again, and I've never seen it.
Okay.
But that's okay, because I'm pretty sure you have not heard of the movie that is my number 3, which is not even a Christmas movie, but it has it ends like around the climax of the movie happens at New Year's Eve. So okay. I like to watch it around Christmas time, and so that's why I'm throwing it in here. It's called Made for Each Other. It's with Jimmy Stewart, and I forget the name of the actress, but she's actually one of the actresses that is like one of my favorite like old time actresses. I'm trying to remember her name, but basically what the story is about is it starts out really corny, and this is the way, like, I love it when my movies start out corny and then they end with like this intense emotional drama. It's like it's fulfilling to me for some reason. These two kids, they run away and get married, and they come back and they surprise their parents, like, we got married. You didn't even tell us you were dating anyone. No, we just got married. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, and everything is going great. Like, he's got this great job, and then everything is going fantastic. They got an apartment, everything's great, everything's cool. You know how like the newlywed thing, and it's like, oh my gosh,
honeymoon phase, yeah.
Exactly. And so then, then the husband's mother moves in with them, and things, tensions start to rise, and the wife doesn't get along with the mother-in-law, and things start to get a little stressful, and then she finds out she's pregnant, but their apartment is too small, so now they're sharing a tiny apartment with a baby and the mother-in-law, and so the stress gets even worse and worse and worse, and then things like he gets screwed over at his job, and he's not making enough money, and he's, everything is just really hard, and then things just get worse and worse and worse and worse until they're contemplating divorce. It is New Year's Eve, and they're just like, we are tired of this. We are tired of mother-in-laws. We're tired of kids. We're tired of all of it. And they're at a New Year's Eve party talking about getting a divorce. And then they get a call from whoever's babysitting their kid. I think it might have been the mother-in-law. I can't remember. And your kid is in the hospital and has pneumonia and may die, is basically how this is like the climax of the movie. And so they're distraught. Their marriage is on the line. Everything is terrible. And then they find out that the only medicine that will cure their kid is on the other side of the country on New Year's Eve, and it's snowing over Colorado or whatever. And so the dad, played by Jimmy Stewart, who's just fantastic as always, he gets on the phone with the pilot who could have flown the medicine over. And he's on the phone, and the pilot's trying to explain to him, it's not possible, we can't do this. And like, again, hugely intense moment. Jimmy Stewart, off camera, breaks down crying, and you don't hear that. All you hear is the pilot on the phone with him saying, oh my gosh, the guy is crying. And then what, I can't remember if it was the pilot on the phone or one of the pilots in the room. He's like, I'm single. I have no attachments. I'm going to fly this plane. And so I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but this is a very Donovan.
Wow, I got to check this movie out. This sounds like a Fowler family classic that we haven't stumbled upon. Who directed it?
I can't remember. I'm pulling it up now.
Was it?
It's director John Cromwell, and the actress is Carol Lombard.
Carol Lombard is great. She's amazing.
Yes.
She was in a movie called To Be or Not to Be, which is like an absolute classic. It's a little controversial because there's a lot of like Nazi humor in it. Well, like the whole thing is about. Okay, wait a minute. That came out wrong. The whole thing is about a troupe of actors pretending to be Nazis in order to save people during early like Poland invasion. So there's a lot of jokes about World War II that were made before people had full realization of the horrors of what the Nazis were doing. Like, it kind of makes light of the Nazis in a way that some people found issues with. But she's great. It's a great movie. Don't get me wrong. It's fantastic. It's a great comedy. She's in it, and she's fantastic. I mean, she was a fantastic actress. She was married to Clark Gable, and unfortunately her career got cut short because she was, I think, flying around the country promoting war bonds early on, like 1940, I think it was. And unfortunately her plane crashed like into a mountain and she died. Yeah. Clark Gable supposedly never got over it. But yeah, she was a fantastic actress.
Yeah, she was also in My Man Godfrey, which is, I think, a really quirky movie. I think that she's got this very flighty, because I've seen it. I haven't seen the movie you're talking about, but I've seen her in a couple of movies, and she's also kind of this like totally feminine, like border. She's like the high maintenance girlfriend type in every movie I've seen her in, and I just find that to be just kind of charming. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just really like that about her.
I'm gonna have to check that one out. That sounds right up my alley. So I'll have to watch that one this Christmas.
As I was telling you the plot, I was like, this is like 100% Donovan's favorite movie, and I didn't even.
Well, I'm looking forward to it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's got like you got to save the kid, and you got to fly the plane, and you got to like it's all.
Oh, yeah. That pilot, man. Those are the guys that this country is built on.
Yeah.
I'm single. I'll do it. You know, like.
So Donovan's like envisioning himself as the pilot right now.
Oh, I love about pilots. They're great.
So, that was number 3. So, what is your number 4? And not number 4, number 2. We're going backwards.
My number 2 is Home Alone.
Okay.
And I think Home Alone it's one of those movies that I heard recently that they're going to try to remake it, and I was like, I don't know.
We can't remake Home Alone.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's like, to me, it's the sort of movie where there's just so much intersection going on that makes that movie great. You've got John Hughes, you've got Christopher Columbus, you've got oh shoot, what's the woman's name? The mom. She's a great actress.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Name, but you've got her. You've got Macaulay Culkin. I mean, like in the best movie he was ever in.
Yeah.
And John Candy. I mean, like all these great actors, and it really captures like a time period, I think, in America that was like this, like, you know. It was, well, I mean, it's John Hughes. I mean, John Hughes was just a master at capturing suburban life in the United States in the 80s and the 90s. And it really rings true for a lot of us who grew up in that time. And I think, honestly, the movie rings more universal than that because the relationships are so great. And who can't relate to like being kind of maybe, you know, a little bit of an outcast in their own family or, you know, especially when you're a kid and you feel like nobody understands you and like all this stuff and you wish that, you know, your family disappeared and that wish that you just had the run of the house. And I just think it's such a great story. It just, the mother-son relationship in that movie especially is so tender and deep. Like the sacrifice that the mom makes to, you know, to go back and be with her son on Christmas Day is just so it's just so endearing. And John Candy's character, they're like I have a hard time breaking down movies like that because they're just, like I said, there's so many intersections that make them so good. And that's not even talking about Joe Pesci and the guy from City Slickers, who I'm forgetting the name of, but who's also a great actor. I love it. And my family, I honorable mention, I mean, like, well, not honorable mention, but I should mention this. It's a classic in my household. Like, my mom loves the production design of that movie. Like, she, like, kind of she didn't design our house after it, but there were certain things, like, in the house of the McAllisters that my mom, like, I started seeing them, and I started seeing, like, identical lamps and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, my mom is like using this as like a template because it's such a beautiful house. And it's like, it's, you know, there's a reason that, that as Joe Pesci says, like, that's the silver tuna, you know, that's the one. Yeah, so like we would always have Home Alone parties at my house, which would be like a night where it was usually a Friday night or a Saturday night. And we would all sit down and watch it, and we would order cheese pizza, and we would make like massive sundaes like he makes in the movie and stuff like that. So, and the music, John Williams' score, just like I could go on and on, but like Chris Columbus is directing, John Williams' score, John Hughes is writing, and John Williams. There's a song on the soundtrack that doesn't even appear in the movie. That's one of the most like emotionally complex Christmas compositions I've ever heard. It's like
Yeah.
so dramatic and amazing, but clearly it was probably a little too dramatic for the movie, but it just like I don't know, it's one of my favorite Christmas songs. Anyways, so
I think that's why I like the movie though, because that one I did end up bumping it off of my top five, but I actually loved the sequel more than I loved the original.
really.
I just think it's
Oh my
funnier for some
gosh,
reason.
you love the pigeon lady over the shovel slayer? Come on.
It's a little bit much, but
Oh
like I
gosh.
love
Well,
like,
I mean,
I thought that oh gosh, what's the name of the kid?
Kevin.
Kevin, yes.
Yeah.
I thought that his little creations throughout the house in the second one were more interesting than in the first one. I thought that they were a little bit more complicated, and that's what sold me on those movies in the first place is okay, what's the trap he's gonna set next? And I felt like the traps in the second one were better than the traps in the first one.
Yeah. I'll have to rewatch the second one.
But
To,
that's the only reason
they
why.
definitely stepped up the game in the second one. I remember there was even like concerns that it might have been like too violent in some respects, but it's all slapstick. That's the other thing about it is that it's like really good slapstick. Like it's
Yeah.
basically Three Stooges, like mixed with family drama.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. My favorite part of the second movie is when the guy puts his head that's on fire in the toilet filled with gasoline, and I just
Oh
love
my
that
god.
because I would have done that myself.
Oh, I mean, to counter the one part in the first movie with the tarantula
Mm,
where it's crawling on Joe Pesci's vest and
mm.
he's like out.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he wakes up and Marv, the idiot robber, is standing over him with a crowbar and he just goes, Marv, what are you doing? And then he's like, don't move. And like he just goes like Marv, and then like he tries to hit it with the crowbar and ends up like breaking Joe Pesci's ribs. It was so relatable as a kid because if I if I was allowed a flamethrower as a child, I would have used it to go after spiders. Like I hated spiders more than anything. Like I would have gone after spiders in the most heavy-handed, most destructive way. And
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
I can relate to Marv on this one, but I also obviously
This is gonna be
feel badly.
a complete tangent, but that just reminded me of a story that one of my former real estate bosses told me. She used to live in Carmel,
Okay.
and there's a lot of rattlesnakes in
Oh, Clint
Carmel.
Eastwood's old wait, Carmel by the Sea, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood was mayor of that town.
Yeah, so she used to walk around with a tiny little woman's pistol in
Okay.
her pocket and shoot rattlesnakes in the yard. Just
Good for her.
just because
Yeah.
she liked the rattlesnakes, she just shoot them. And that's what that made me think of because
Well, it
you
doesn't
I
take a
guess
whole lot
you
not
have
to
to know her.
like a rattlesnake.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny. It's just funny to me to
Yeah.
think of somebody like her just walking around. Yeah, rattlesnake. Oh yeah, I got my pistol right here and just shooting rattlesnakes in the yard. It just sounds funny to me, but maybe
It's
that's because I'm a snob from California.
I mean, when it comes to rattlesnakes, I'll allow it because
Yeah,
rattlesnakes are highly problematic.
I
As a
mean snakes in general. I am not a reptile
yes,
person under any
yeah,
circumstances. Please.
I'm with Saint Patrick on the snakes thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Home Alone, classic, definitely a '90s classic, but also just an all-around cinematic classic. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that one's on my honorable mentions now because there were other movies that took precedence. But for my number two, I picked It's a Wonderful Life. Again, not because it's like my favorite movie, but because I do think the messaging in it is uh, really, really good. And I think I like movies that deal with like dark subjects,
Mm,
like reality, like people thinking about committing suicide and stuff. Like I feel like the holiday season sometimes encourages that kind of thinking for a lot of people that are like
yeah,
struggling because there's the divide between the people that are really really excited about the holidays and
yeah.
then there's the people that are already having problems and then they don't get the holiday that they would want and then it just like pushes them in the other direction.
So I was just thinking of like somebody misquoting this interview. Kelly Kelly says, "I like movies about I like Christmas movies about suicide." But you're absolutely right. I'm not trying to undercut your point. You
No, no.
are you are absolutely right, and it is a very important thing to bring up. To quote Martin Riggs from Lethal Weapon, a
Mhm.
Christmas movie that's on my honorable mentions. Like, yeah, everybody has these thoughts, especially around the silly season. Like when he's trying to talk the guy down from jumping.
Yeah. I just think that kind of thing, it is something that I know a lot of people struggle with, and so I think that it's important to have things that are like in the media that recognize that this is a real thing that people deal with, where you know the holidays are supposed to be like the happiest time of the year, and for a lot of people they're just not, and so that's one of the reasons why um I include that in my top five. Again, not because I'm overly fond of that movie, but because I think the messaging is good, and I think that I do like movies that deal with real life issues, and I think that's one of them. So
I remember you said, I think on our last list, you mentioned Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, right?
yeah, yeah.
And we talked about It's a Wonderful Life, and I totally agree. I personally, so this is actually a great segue because that's number one on my list.
Okay.
So we'll just knock that out of the way now. I It's my favorite Christmas movie. It wasn't always my favorite Christmas movie. In fact, I remember my family would sit down and watch it and I would leave. Like I wouldn't like stick around for it. I was always like, yeah, this is like a huge saga and like, it's just black and white and boring. And as over the last like 3 years, I've really come to enjoy it like so much more and see kind of the value of it. And there's just the movie itself is like you were talking about with the Jimmy Stewart, made for each other. There's so many good parts in that movie that make up the whole. And you're right, like the theme of suicide is very well done in the sense of like, it's not it's well balanced, like you're not like it doesn't take you to that dark place, like it doesn't take you to such a dark place that you get depressed about it. Like you understand like Bailey's problem. Like I remember understanding like in some respects like that sort of panic over losing something that you thought was so important. And like even Uncle Billy, like that part where he's just like crying on his desk and the little squirrel comes up and just puts its hands up on his shoulder, like because he's got all those animals and stuff. But there's so many good parts. I would say like one of my favorite parts in that movie, and it actually came to me when you were talking about Made for Each Other, because I had forgotten about it, was the part where he's on the phone. He goes to visit the woman who is going to be his wife. I can't remember her name now.
Donna Reed.
Donna Reed's character.
Yeah.
And they're listening. Mary, yeah, okay, yeah.
You should have got that one.
I know, right? He goes to visit her, and they're listening on the phone to the guy who's trying to like court her, who's like the big time industrialist guy.
Yeah.
And there's the part where like he eventually brings like he hears George is there and like he's trying to bring him in on a deal and like trying to court her at the same time, and you just have the moment between Mary and George where he's kind of at the end of his rope as far as like he's not getting the lifestyle that he wanted. He wanted to leave, he wanted to go out and see the world, but he just knows that that's not going to happen, and he like grabs her and like yells at her the thing about like I don't want like anything that you want, like I don't want to stay here. I don't want a family. Like I don't know if he says I don't want a family, but he basically says like he's very forceful about it, and it ends with them just embracing and kissing one another, and it's such a great like kind of moment of really it's just so romantic because it's like yeah, like he wants these things, but he knows that he's called to something more, specifically a relationship with her. And he just can't get over that, and like that's why eventually it breaks down. And it's such a well-directed scene. There's a couple scenes like that in the film, like when the little kid is like on his lap and he's knows that he's going to be indicted for fraud or whatever. Yeah. And the kid's just trying to, like, you know, entertain him with the Santa mask, and he just grabs the kid and just hugs him and, like, is like almost crying.
Yeah.
So there's, and then on top of that, just so many beautiful moments. And I think Frank Capra did say that he thought it was the best encapsulation of all the films that he did, which is ironic because it didn't do very well at the box office. And the only reason people really know about it, from what I've heard, is the fact that it played on TV so much.
Like, and I think that was one of the reasons why a lot of movies, like The Wizard of Oz, also bombed originally, and then people started watching it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it was the only reason why it had any fame was because it won awards for the soundtrack, but then it didn't. But it did. The movie itself did not do good. Because I was actually just watching a documentary about Judy Garland, and they were talking about how she was, like, really depressed after The Wizard of Oz came out, and it did so poorly because she was like, I worked so hard and I kept on the diet, and I practiced and I did this, and she was fairly abused on that movie, and how she was treated. So I can understand how, she went through all of that and only to have it bomb. And obviously later on the movie became beloved, and she's one of the most famous actresses in Hollywood of all time. But
it's one of the top, like one of the most cinematic movies, like, of all time. Like, Wizard of Oz is not going to be remade. I mean, despite the fact that Disney tried to do the whole offshoot recently, but, like, you're just not going to top it.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I will say about It's a Wonderful Life, just as the closing on that, is that, I know a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people try to make the argument for It's a Wonderful Life that it's, that it's a socialist film, and I probably mentioned this before.
I think I made that argument.
Yeah, but the thing about it is I was actually thinking about, because I never gave a whole lot of thought to it in the past. Like, I was more involved with the emotional aspects of the film and the storytelling of the characters. But I do think the funny thing about it is like, you look at it and really, like, Mr. Potter is kind of the big bad capitalist, right? But ultimately, the main message of the film is that the three things that carry George Bailey through his crisis are faith in God, community, and charity.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, those are the three things. Like, in the beginning, he's praying, like, he literally is, like, about to jump, and he prays, and that's why Clarence gets sent.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, obviously with community, it's like realizing if he hadn't been born, it's like, as an individual, he had so much impact on the lives of others, and those lives have such an impact on him. Realizing how much he's tied to, everybody else is a huge, imprint. And then beyond that, obviously charity. It's like, basically what he's doing is charitable. And the thing about it is that ultimately, when it comes down to the socialist argument, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to give that power to somebody like Mr. Potter? It's like, yeah, sure, if the power goes to somebody like George Bailey, great. But at the same time, George Bailey is just a man.
Yeah.
Like, the power does go to him in a way. Like, he takes it upon himself. He hasn't given it. It's not imposed upon him, but he takes it upon himself. And he does break in a way. And then that's when, everybody kind of as an individual comes together in community and they help him out. But it is sort of like, I just never really fully understand the whole argument about the socialist angle. I think it's people trying to mold the movie to what they want it to be, as opposed to not understanding how it was actually, how Capra in particular felt about it, and what the final thing is.
Having watched more Capra movies, I mean, I've seen probably 4 or 5 of them, maybe. He's got a lot of similar themes throughout his movies, and it's also interesting. He always uses the same actors over and over again too.
Yeah.
Like, I guess he's just, I'm comfortable with these people. I know how they do things. I know how they react to different things, so I'm able to work with them easily. But I feel like that that sometimes his movies require the extra context. Like, you can still watch them and enjoy the movies, but if you want to actually go deeper with it, you really do have to watch the other movies for context, because then
Yeah.
you're able to see, okay, these themes that were in this movie are also in this movie, and here's why, and all of that kind of stuff. So Frank Capra is probably one of my, we should do an episode about movie directors, because
Yeah, that'd be great.
he's top 2 at least. I mean, he's fantastic. I've enjoyed the majority of his movies, I would say.
Listen, I've only seen It's a Wonderful Life.
Mm-hmm.
I always stayed away from Mr. Washington and all that stuff, because it felt, in my youth, I was like, oh, that's cliche, I'm not going to watch it, which is a weird character defect that I have, that I won't watch something because I have these ideas of what it is as opposed to actually finding out about it. But ultimately, It's a Wonderful Life is a perfect example of why he's such a good director.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like those moments that I was talking about, just amazing performances and such a great story. So really good storyteller. Anyways, what is your number one?
My number one is A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I forgot about that one too.
That is my favorite Christmas movie. I think it's the best one of all of them. And the reason is because there's a little bit of bias going on, because I think that it's the only movie that actually tells the nativity story in a mainstream forum. And
it's true, yeah, it is and does a great job of it too.
Yeah. There was a lot of controversy over whether they were actually going to do it, because there was a group of people that were like, it's irreverent to put that story in a comic strip like that. And then there was another group of people that were like, well, we can't have religion in here either. And then there was people like, but it's about
Charlie Brown. Oh, brother.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like the movie. It's very bold of them to actually put the legit story in there.
Yeah.
And it shuts down the movie for a minute and is like, here's what Christmas is really about. It's not about these generalities. It's about an event that actually happened, and here's the significance of the event. And I appreciate it. And reading from the Bible, that's not a thing that you see a lot done in a reverent fashion in any movie these days. And so that's one of the main reasons why I like that movie. I also just enjoy it because it's the Peanuts. I love Charlie Brown. I love all of them. It's really fun. It's really it's something you can enjoy as a kid and also as an adult, like a lot of these movies. So that's my number one. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
So fantastic in that movie. I agree. I agree with you. I actually, honestly, I'm gonna do something here that might be controversial. I'm gonna knock Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer off the top of my list, and I'm gonna put Charlie Brown's Christmas.
Okay.
Instead, and mainly due to the fact that you're right. I feel like there's much more meaning to it than Rudolph. Despite many essays by film students to the contrary, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is not an allegory for the Christ story. But ultimately, I think I agree with you. I totally agree with you, and I love the characters in that. I love the whole even what we were talking about before, even Charlie Brown's whole disposition of being slightly depressed, and the whole reason is because he's inquisitive and he wants to find out the truth of the holiday. He doesn't even know it, but even going to the what's her name, the little girl with the football,
Lucy.
Who,
by the way, Lucy is me. Lucy is me.
There we go. I could actually see that. One of these days, you'll have to be Lucy for Halloween or something like that.
I've been planning on that. I actually wanted to do it last year because I don't know if you remember when I used to work at the Daily Wire. I had a picture of Lucy above my desk that it's a little cartoon that says everyone is entitled to my opinion, because that is me. I don't know if you remember that, but I had that on my desk for...
I don't know if I ever read it, but I think I saw Lucy on your desk.
Yeah.
But even going to her and asking for psychiatric help, and she has that little booth.
Yeah.
And she tries to immediately slap a phobia on him.
Yeah.
And And it was like, it rings super true. I mean, not to say like that you shouldn't go seek out, therapy when you need it, or you shouldn't try to figure out what's wrong with you through a diagnostic sense. But like a lot of times I feel like people are always like looking for a label to put on what they're feeling. And it's like, no, I mean, it might just be a natural thing to, want to get to the bottom of, what the truth is. And so it's a masterly, it's a masterfully done kind of thing that they put it all together in this very entertaining, like you said, it can be, enjoyed by children, but it also has this deeper message and is very nostalgic for adults. I also love the part where Snoopy licks Lucy.
Yeah.
She's like, I've been kissed by a dog. I have dog germs. Somebody get the sterilite, something like that. And like, it just cuts back to Snoopy, and he just like looks, and he's like, like he just is so upset. But yeah. Charlie Brown's Christmas is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, that has to be my favorite movie for nostalgic reasons. I think the messaging is spot on. I also think that through all of these movies, they kind of have very similar themes, like dealing with depression during the holidays, dealing with losing sight of the real meaning of Christmas.
They all have. I feel like all of the movies have, and I'm not saying that this is missing entirely from movies today, but I will venture to say that a lot of times, like I was talking to my little brother, and he said, "Oh, well, so you're not going to put Elf in your top 5?" And I don't think he was necessarily suggesting it, but I do think he likes that movie. And I said, honestly, Elf doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to me. Like it's a fun adolescent kind of like silly Christmas comedy. And I think it's a classic in that regard. Like I think like a lot of people love Elf, and Will Ferrell's great in it, and it does have a lot of funny stuff, and it's kind of a thing. But to me, it all kind of boils down to a gimmick in the end that they kind of slapped this like theme onto. Whereas like these really do have sort of a, I just find that they're much deeper. That they actually like, and I think that's what Christmas stories are kind of all about. I mean, even traditionally going back to Dickens and all this stuff, and obviously the original story of the Nativity, it's like it's a very deep holiday. It's not just, it's deeper than Halloween. It's obviously not deeper than Easter, but like, deeper than Valentine's Day, deeper than St. Patrick's Day. It's like it's really epic.
I think one of the problems with Christmas particularly is that it is the most commercial holiday that exists in the world, and I think that has existed in all of history.
I don't necessarily find that to be a problem.
No, I don't think it's a problem.
Only they start to edge Christmas out of the commercialization, which is the weirdest thing about it. It's like when you start to edge the actual holiday out of, it's like everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too, and be like, it's like, okay, why don't you just call it the winter solstice then? It's like, why are we here? And I think that's what you're saying.
I think though that's why there's a lot of movies that are like, okay, we like the presents and we like all of this and we like, and there's all this other external stuff, but here's the real reason why Christmas exists, because there's just so much else that's attached to it that I think people make these movies to remind themselves of the actual meaning of the holiday, because there's so many other things attached to it.
I agree. So honorable mentions.
Yes.
Really quick, because I know some people out there don't
like conversations. Well, why the heck are you watching my show if you don't like it?
So I'll just go down the list of my honorable mentions really fast, and kind of I'll categorize them in a way. So I have Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, and LA Confidential.
I knew Die Hard was going to be in there.
I was considering putting Die Hard on my top 5, but honestly, I just, like I said, like for it to be a Christmas movie, in my opinion, I'm looking for a little bit of a deeper message. I think Die Hard is an amazing action movie, but the fact that I can kind of watch it year round kind of disqualifies it. Um, but it is a great Christmas movie and that like Christmas action movie. And
Yeah.
so is Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon also takes place during Christmas, has Christmas songs in it, and is great. I mean, it's such a kind of slice of 1980s LA. LA Confidential, the beginning is during Christmas. And that's also really cool. I just enjoy the 1940s like recreated with Christmas and all that stuff, and with the that movie in particular. Jingle All the Way is like a terrible movie kind of, but I just have a sentimental attachment to it because it's so cheesy and so funny, and it also like ties into all the stuff my parents went through to get me Power Ranger toys as a kid. And I know that they relate to it, and I just like I think it's great. Shop Around the Corner is a fantastic Christmas movie, speaking of Jimmy Stewart, and it's just like an all-around classic. The Bishop's Wife I also throw into that as well. And then, although The Bishop's Wife walks this fine line where Cary Grant's character, like if you recut the movie or change the music, he would come off as like way, way creepier than like there are boundaries being pushed. Because he's an angel, you allow it, but there are some serious boundaries being pushed with Cary Grant's character that are kind of a little funny when you look at it through a different lens. But why do I always forget her name? Loretta. Oh man, I'm gonna kick myself, but she's great in it, the main actress, and so is David Niven. And then lastly, I'll say every Christmas my family watches, or it's been a tradition to watch an episode of the old Sherlock Holmes series with Jeremy Brett, and there's one called The Blue Carbuncle, which takes place during Christmas. And it's one of the best. Personally, I think it's one of the best Sherlock Holmes stories, because Sherlock Holmes shows it. It's a great Christmas Sherlock Holmes story because he ends up showing mercy in the end, and like it's a really good break in his character that shows that he's not like a heartless person, but it's also a fun like little Christmas episode. And then there's a Beatrix Potter cartoon called The Tailor of Gloucester, which is also a great like little Christmas thing. You can probably find both those on YouTube actually. The Beatrix Potter animated series from years and years back from the 90s is like really well done, and The Tailor of Gloucester is it's a funny little tale about like mice who helped this tailor who got in a little over his head finish this very ambitious kind of project the night before Christmas. So they all like help him sew and stuff like this. It's fun. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions. I'm sure I'm leaving a few out.
Well, I will throw in a couple more in there. We already talked about my honorable mentions were Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which we discussed, Home Alone, which we also discussed, and Frosty the Snowman. Frosty
the Snowman is great.
I love that movie. That's a great movie. And then this one's not a movie, but it's one that I like to watch because it makes me cry. It's not the season finale, but it's right at the end of the Justice League cartoon. They have the Justice League Christmas episode. Oh, cool. And I just love that episode because it's about how Martian Manhunter is the only one, because he's from Mars, obviously. He doesn't have anywhere to go home for Christmas, so Clark Kent is like, you can come to my house and stay with my family.
Wait, who invites him?
Clark Kent.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's great. It's like, it's all about him going home for Christmas and experiencing Christmas for the first time on Earth, and he spends it with the Kents, and the cat doesn't like him at the house, and so then he's a shapeshifter, so he changes his form into a man and then goes walking down the street and to like find out what Christmas is like, but not like cause a scene as he walks down the street, and he's like observing the different practices, and then at the end of it, it's basically about how he finally gets it, and you hear him singing at the end. He's singing like Christmas songs at the end, but it's just really cute, and I it's a cartoon, so, and I cry over cartoons because I'm a
DC
pathetic human being.
They
really are. Yeah, we do need to do a top TV show episode. We have so many episodes we have to do, Donovan. It's insane, but that would be in my top 10 for TV shows, because I think that's a fantastic one. And then I thought, did I have another one? There's just so many Christmas episodes of TV shows that are just classics, but I think that's probably my favorite one, unless I can think of something else on the fly, but I can't. So we're just gonna go with it. That is my. Those are my honor. Oh, my last one. Since you did mention you guys have a family tradition of watching a movie that maybe is not necessarily a Christmas movie, but it's a movie that you guys watch. Every Christmas Eve, I'm going to let all of the fans now in on the secret behind the Companion Family Christmas Eve. Every Christmas Eve, we watch In Search of the Castaways, which is the most ridiculous Disney movie. It's absurd.
In Search of the Castaways. Is it a live action Disney movie?
It's a live action Disney. Yes. It's a live action Disney movie about two kids that are trying to find their father, and their father was on a ship that there was a mutiny or something, and he, they said he was killed, and they're like, no, we found this message in a bottle, and we know that it's his handwriting, and we found him. And they find this French guy who is like with them, and they're trying to convince this ship captain, the guy who had owned the ship that their father had been sailing that went down. They're trying to convince him to take them to find their father. And it's not a Christmas movie. There is nothing Christmassy about it. But my dad got it for me for Christmas years ago. It was like the Christmas Eve present that I got. And so every year since, we've watched this movie. Anyway, it's the most absurd, corny, campy movie ever. And that's why it's perfect for Christmas Eve. We watch it every year. So that is the behind the scenes of the Companion Family Christmas Eve. You can guarantee I will be doing that about 6:30 p.m. Pacific Coast time Christmas Eve. So those are my honorable mentions for Christmas movies.
That's fantastic. Yeah, those non-Christmas movies that you just find that are tied to the holiday are always a lot of fun.
Somehow they're tied to the holiday. So I hope that everybody enjoyed this episode. I know most people enjoy my long form episodes, and I really enjoy having Donovan come on.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all your listeners for tolerating me for an hour.
I think they're going to enjoy this episode. This is the first time they got to actually see you on the camera. So they'll either be like, oh, okay, this guy's legit, or they'll run away screaming. So we'll find out which one happens.
Yes. I've had both effects, on people. So
yes,
characteristic.
That is very true. All right. Well, thank you so much, Donovan, for coming on. I will talk.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Excellent. Everybody, have a wonderful Christmas, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode.